fight fans, welcome to the Zapata Brand Podcast Boxing Edition, brought to you by Ringside. Go to ringside.com/podcast, and you too can get upwards of 40% off selected brands. Well, I am back from Vegas. It is now Tuesday, August 13th, when we're filming this. Got back from Vegas. I haven't been on with my man, Big P, Percy Crawford from the VIP Crew YouTube channel. Percy, how are you?
What's up, GZ? I'm good, brother. How you doing, man?
Good that I'm landed and in the ground and on ground here in Pennsylvania.
Man, look, I know you had the airport trip from hell, but it sounds and looks like the Vegas trip was worth every second.
It was. I had some time that I could spend with my wife. Much needed vacation time. Met a few people out there. Hit it pretty big in the casino. Got back home and here. If it wasn't for the plane ride to and from, I'd be really contemplating ever flying in an airline again.
Hey man, you met Dana White. I ain't gonna let you leave.
Dana White, yes, we met him. Great guy, fantastic guy. They say a lot of times you shouldn't meet celebrities, but this was one of those times where a guy who I'm like a zero, a nobody, and he spent his time talking to me and told me a lot of good insight and business tips and but basically a life too. He was actually a very good guy.
Yeah, man, I watched your episode and you say you met his kids, and I was like, that's big time because I know he's real private. So that's kudos to you, man. That's a good look, brother.
No, it was good. It was very good. I was very pleased at that point. Well, we haven't talked in a while. As a matter of fact, when we were talking about our topics today, we haven't even talked since the Pitbull Rayo fight, and that was something that I think we should lead off with, go backwards, and then move forward to what had happened this past weekend. We were just talking about now with Pitbull losing to Rayo, which, by the way, he boxed brilliantly in that fight, which may give Tank trouble. The Tank Davis situation has got a little bit sticky right now. Where does Tank go from here? Pitbull's out of the question. If they can't make a Shakur fight, where does Tank go from here?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I always thought that money could lure Pitbull Cruz back to 135 to fight Tank. Tank doesn't seem interested in fighting at 140. So I always thought money, opportunity would lure him back down there. He suffered a bad loss. I actually thought when that fight was made that was a terrible stylistic matchup for him because I remember how the guy boxed him on the undercard of Crawford Spence. So Rayo's 5'10", Pitbull's 5'5". I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know what Rayo had to do to have success, and he did it perfectly. That puts Tank in a sticky situation. Shakur Stevenson seems to be leaning towards Matchroom. Oscar's in good with Turkey, and Oscar has Zapata, who's a worthy and formidable opponent for Shakur at 135. So that eliminates Zapata, who I actually think is Tank's mandatory. Pitbull Cruz, you would think, is out of the question coming off of a loss. I don't know. I don't know what Tank does next. He's been quiet on the boxing front. I saw him at the Olympics. I see he's doing a great thing in Baltimore with the book bag drive, but on the boxing front, he hasn't said a whole lot.
No, he hasn't. Now, this throws up a couple things. Number one, don't necessarily think where Pitbull goes from here, because I think Pitbull just fell in love with his power. And made a mistake of you're not going to just go get one punch knockout on a guy like Rayo. He moves too much, gives you a lot of angles. But Shakur did not look good either in his last fight. If they can get someone together, would that open a door for a Rayo Shakur fight in that point here? Trying to make something out of two bad situations.
I think Shakur is probably a few fights away from going up to 140, where Rayo's campaigning at. I do think stylistically that's a great fight. I would love to see it, but I'm thinking we're gonna get Zapata next, and no knock to Pitbull Cruz. He is who he is. He's a pressure guy. But I think Pitbull lived off of going the distance with Tank. It's kind of the way I look at Madrimov, honestly. Their biggest win is a loss, essentially, because he was the first guy to take Bud the distance in, 7 years? Pitbull Cruz is the first guy to go the distance with Tank in X amount of years. So I think their biggest loss is a win. Madrimov will have a future. Pitbull Cruz future probably just got knocked back a peg or two. But he's still a fan favorite, so I think he can still go on and do big things. I just don't think it'll be the Tank fight.
I think he needs to improve a little bit instead of going in for that one punch knockout, because sometimes it doesn't work. Tank does have a backup plan if that doesn't work. You're right. He gives away a lot of rounds, which We talked about Shakur, which you're leaning towards Shakur that fight. There's a lot of adjustments out of it, but William Zapata is a guy that could really upset the apple cart here because of his style, and he could take a punch too.
And Zapata's in a win-win situation. I mean, outside of the diehard fans, a lot of casuals don't even know who he is. So he's literally playing with house money if he gets Tank or Shakur. I think Pitbull Cruz power didn't follow him up at 140. So him chasing a knockout hurts him even more so. And he got a little bit of fool's gold at his first fight at 140 against Rolly because Rolly's a little shop worn. His legs are a little, long in the tooth. And you can hurt a guy like that. But the average 140-pounder, you're not just going to hit him and get rid of him like that. So Pitbull Cruz in a tight situation. Zapata's in a great situation.
Yeah, and that led us to now the main event on that show there. Terence Crawford against Madrimov. A tougher fight than I anticipated for Terence, but Terence hasn't been in a tough fight in a long time. The 54-pound, I think that made a difference, but I just read that I thought he vacated the 47-pound title, and he's going to 54.
Yeah, he's done at welterweight. I think that's the title.
Is that the right move right now? Because it didn't look like he could handle 54 as well as he handled the 47s.
I think it's the right moves in terms of where Bud is in his career. Bud is basically, I don't want to say cashing out, like he just wants the biggest money fight and he doesn't care if he win or lose. He'll be 37 years old, I think, in October. He's moving up to 154. He said it all leading up to the Spence fight. Making 147 wasn't easy for Bud either. So at 36, 37 years old, is he willing to do what it takes to get back to 47 for the right fight? The problem is the big money fights are all north of 47, with the exception of Boots Ennis, which I think that's a great fight on paper. I don't know if it's a huge money fight. Some of the names I think he's chasing, I think he has to be in those upper divisions. I think Bud is being punished because he dominated Errol Spence. I think Madrimov's a good fighter. I thought he probably won 8 or 9 rounds. But when you dominate Errol Spence in what most people consider a 50-50 fight, when most people hear the name of Madrimov, they think this is a tune-up fight for Bud or a showcase fight for Bud. But if you really understand boxing, a guy with 300-plus amateur fights and a world champion 10 fights or 11 fights into his pro career, Madrimov can fight a little bit. And I think Bud knew that, and I think he discovered that.
Now, leading up to this fight, I thought, okay, this was going to be the showcase. I thought you were right. Then as I drew closer, I started really looking at Madrimov. I said, well, his style's a little awkward. Could give him problems because he throws a lot of, but the Russian fighters, the European fighters, they are just tough as nails. They fight and they come to fight and there's no quitting them. That's the only thing I thought could have given him a problem. Similar to what Pitbull had with Ryo, just that he relied on one thing and couldn't get it done. Bud's a different fighter. He has a lot of bags, a lot of stuff in his tricks in his bag. He could do a lot of different things. With that being said, I know you said not cashing out. He wants to fight Canelo. He really wants that fight. But has Terence Crawford proven to be a draw? And I say this because I know it looked on TV like that place was sold out. Okay. I heard otherwise. And I did hear, believe it or not, there was AI involved in some of those seating. That's what I did hear. Now, whether that's true or not, but I heard there was tens of thousands of seats or thousands of seats that were given away. And I did hear there was AI involved. I'm not positive. I'd like to see if that was true or not. Because I did see somewhere that I saw how it looked. I said, wow, that's awfully familiar from the Crawford fight. Is he someone that's going to draw the attention of, and we'll get to our next topic there, of Canelo fighting someone who is going to draw big, but is that a guy that can pull that card where he could draw big? Or would he fight a Ryan Garcia and take a shot there?
I think a Bud Canelo fight is a huge fight for us diehard fight fans. I think Bud is who he is. I mean, when Bob Arum said he didn't move the needle, I don't think Bob was lying. You put him in Omaha, Nebraska, he does great. He's a hometown guy. I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with that because obviously boxing is a business, but there's certain guys that can sell in their backyard and they can't go any farther. And there's guys who can fight their ass off and just can't sell. I always look at a guy like Andre Ward. I compare Bud to him a lot. Pound for pound number one at one point, wasn't the hugest draw. That's the position Bud's in. I just can't picture Bud with 14 more pounds on him than I saw on August 3rd. That was him at 154.
Mhm.
Canelo's not fighting him anything under 68. That's another 14. I just can't see that.
Mhm. So why would he push that narrative?
I
It's a
just
lose.
think it's the biggest
It's a
fight for
lose.
big money.
What?
Me personally, I think Bud has to probably get away from the biggest fight for the biggest money. And if I'm where he is in his career, like I said, about to turn 36, 37 years old, I go for the biggest storyline. And to me, the biggest storyline for Bud Crawford right now is Jermell Charlo. You could sell that footage of him
Mhm.
talking crap back and forth with Charlo between rounds with Spence. Jermell Charlo
Oh,
tweeted the king of 154 is back, but Crawford can say the new king just arrived. I just think Bud needs to lean more towards storyline as opposed to big money fight. There is no bigger storyline than Jermell Charlo. And you got to understand, Bud just carried a promotion by himself. Madrimov didn't speak English, so he kind of
yeah.
needs a guy like a Charlo who's going to fire right back at him. They've had a little animosity. Charlo could say he's trying to get back for his stablemate Errol, well, ex-stablemate Errol. And it's just a storyline to it. I don't even think Boots Enos would really banter up with Bud Crawford. You saw when they crossed each other. Boots didn't really even say anything when Bud passed him and said, I thought you wasn't
Yeah.
watching. So I think you need to put Bud in a situation where he has a guy kind of like him and Errol. They bounced off each other. The trash talk was 50-50. The percentage and people thinking the wins and losses was 50-50. I think Jermell Charlo is the way to go. Now, he probably would need a tune-up fight, but I don't think we'll see Bud anytime soon this year, at least anyways.
I never thought of that. That Charlo fight would be actually very good. He's not. That's how long he's been out,
Oh,
or dropped off the face of the earth.
what? Canelo's in his second fight since him, and he still hasn't fought. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, actually, that's a very good fight. Now that you think about it, you talked about Spence a little bit. You see Spence coming back, or is this the end of the road for Spence?
Spence' body is failing him, man. And when your body fails you, I don't know if there is a up. I think he fights again. I don't know if we get anything close to what we. Even if you just delete the Terrence Crawford fight completely, I don't know if we get anything close to what we had grown accustomed to. I kind of compare him to the former Saints receiver Mike Thomas. I mean, look at what Mike Thomas was, and he had the bad ankle injury, and it's like his body's just failing. This guy's dealt with this same ankle injury, I think, 3 years now, and now
Right.
he's teamless. I look at Errol like that. He's had the retina situation, he had the wreck situation, he got another wreck and hurt his leg, and now I think they're saying a shoulder injury or something like
Yeah.
that is kind of prevent the Fundura fight from moving forward. His body's just failing him.
And that usually means it's time to wind down, or at least it's winding down. Athletes have that very small window, like you did the example you gave of the Saints receiver Johnson. It's a very small window, and once that window shuts, even if it closes a little bit, one, you're never the same. Two, you got that target on your back, and it could get ugly in the sport of boxing anyway.
Yeah, spending more time in physical therapy than training camp, like you said, is winding down. And I mean, that's the harsh reality of boxing. That's the harsh reality of having the kind of car accident he had. I think it all still, not all, but I think a lot of it stems from that.
Speaking about winding it down, um, on that card also, Jared Anderson. Oh well, there was two fights on there that I was of interest. Jared Anderson, Andy Ruiz. Jared Anderson reminded me of Michael Grant. They anointed this guy as the next up and coming star. Not thinking because this guy, the guy that he was fighting, Martin Bacoli, about fighting him. It was Mike the Bounty Hunter's son he lost to, but it wasn't, he was a little outclassed. I think he just was outmatched. He's not, I don't think Martin's great. I think he has got a ton of holes in his, very slow, but he can punch. So I thought this was a perfect matchup for Jared Anderson to look good. He dropped the ball bad. I mean, this was a bad fight. I don't even think Jared honestly wants to be here because of some of the things he had said. He's struggling mentally. Is this the end of the road here for Jared Anderson as far as anointing him as the next up and coming guy? Because I can't even see him getting in there with someone on the next level, let alone someone at the other level.
I think you have to be very careful how you matchmake Jared Anderson. Honestly, I think him and Andy Ruiz is probably the perfect, God, I hate to say this, loser leave town kind of match.
jeez.
like pro wrestling. Like I
Yeah.
just and I actually go the opposite. When I saw he was fighting Bacoli, I'm like, man, if Charles Martin hadn't have took the Jared Anderson fight on short notice, and that was I think it was a 10-round fight. If that was a 12-round fight, this may be an entirely different conversation. Anyways, Charles Martin had him hurt bad late. Bacoli's a brute dude, strong dude, walks forward, kind of take two to give off one. And Michael Hunter is the type of guy that's gonna deal with Bacoli. Slick, smaller heavyweight, can move around a good bit. You can frustrate him. I just thought Jared Anderson would kind of be there to be hit, and it was going to be a battle of attrition. And that's what it came down to, because at one point it looked like the fight was going to be around. And then Jared Anderson came back with some hard body shots, and he just couldn't take what Bacoli was dishing. And honestly, if you let Bacoli tee off on you, it ain't many guys that can. I know he's came out since, and I hate sparring stories, but he said he stopped Usyk and another prominent heavyweight, I can't remember who it was, in sparring, and they wouldn't invite him back. Bacoli can punch, man, and he seems to be able to take a decent punch. I think Michael Hunter stopping him late was just frustration and him not being in the greatest condition.
Oh, I'll tell you what, Anderson could take a bit of a punch. That uppercut that he got hit with, I haven't seen an uppercut hit like that since Alistair Overeem got hit by that uppercut by Ngannou. His neck snapped, and I thought that was it. I said, he ain't getting up from this. I give him credit. He kind of got back on his feet, so I give him credit for that. And that's coming from Bacoli. That guy can punch. I just thought he was too slow, and they set him up for because he's very athletic, Anderson. They set him up to say, okay, this is a guy we're going to move him a little bit, but I think he dropped the ball because I think mentally he failed in there towards the end there when he was getting hit.
He's such a weird case for everything you just said. So if you listen to what you just said, GZ, in one sense, you say it feels like the kid doesn't want to be here, which by his own words and admissions, you can grasp that. Then he shows a ton of heart when he could have literally just checked out.
Yeah.
He gets up and he fights back. In his post-fight interview, he's saying he'll be back and he got to tighten up some things. He's a different one for me, man. I didn't like anything he told Roy Jones Jr. when he said, I don't need to be a champion, and I'm in it for the money. I don't really necessarily even like boxing. Some people can get away with that, but in the heavyweight division, when everybody can punch and everyone's a threat, that's a scary approach, man. And it's such a weird dynamic with him, because I truly thought there was times he could have just stayed on the canvas and he got up and he fought. So it's like it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with him.
Yeah. Speaking of Michael Grant and blown talent, Andy Ruiz has got to be the single most blown talent fighter I've ever seen. I don't know if he is just his body shape is his body shape, but he just never looks like he's in shape. But then he has spots in a fight where he puts 3, 4, 5, 6 punches together. Now, he did have a broken hand that was horrible, but he just didn't look like it doesn't look like he's taking it as serious. And if he would just get in shape, I think he would be a machine and a hell of a fight for anybody. Just ask Anthony Joshua. But I think that he's starting to go on the backside of his career, because once you lose once, things start falling apart for you. They start falling, no one's going to watch you. No, and in the heavyweight division, all it takes is one loss. They don't want to see people with 2, 3, 4, 5 losses. They don't. Andrew Ruiz is going on 3. Well, that wasn't a loss. That was that was a loss. He should have lost that fight.
Absolutely.
He should have lost that fight. That was kind of one of those fights where I was like, how do you give it to, you can't not give it to his opponent. You can't. Where do you think Andy Ruiz goes from here? Because this is not that it's the end of the road. He's young still, but he ain't got much left in the tank, I don't think.
So I said this prior to the fight. I don't know, if I've ever seen 2 fights change a person as much as it changed Andy Ruiz. Those 2 fights with Anthony Joshua, obviously career high paydays. If you look at the lifestyle, he came from this blue collar, down home guy to the sunglasses and the flashy cars and the ranch, and nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor. It was just such a switch up to see him do that. And I think you see flashes of that in the ring, flashes of, I have money, I made it in the ring. Now, to be fair to me, I'm gonna be real with you, I thought Jarrett Miller earned that draw, because there was times in the fight, and I don't know if it's because his hand was smashed or his conditioning was poor. There was literally times in that fight. Andy Ruiz to me came off as a guy that was begging Miller. Like, if you hit me with anything that look hard, I'll check out. And Jared Miller just would not commit. I thought Jared Miller, Big Baby, should have got the decision, but I think he kind of earned that draw for so many rounds where his corner was yelling, let your hands go. He had a great stick going to the body that I thought hurt Ruiz a few times, and he just wouldn't commit to it. Maybe he didn't trust his own conditioning, but it sucked. He was down 25 pounds, I think, from his last fight with Daniel Dubois. He had Bozie Edwards, Boots' dad, as the trainer, showed a little bit of dedication, losing the weight, and just would not fire off. And I think Miller's a little long in the tooth as well. He's had a kickboxing career. He's kind of up there in the boxing, so maybe he just doesn't have the gas tank to do that. But Andy Ruiz, man, I just don't see any fire in Andy Ruiz. And again, much like Jared Anderson, you're in the division where everyone can punch. No one has to cut weight, and you can bank on them coming in depleted. It's bad times for Andy. I thought that was a winnable fight for him.
Andy, when he got rid of Manny Robles, that's when I saw the wheels start to fall off. Mm-hmm. Not to say that Manny was the only thing that could have fixed him, but when you're coming up with someone for that long, you've been with him through the system, he was there. Then when I started hearing the stuff about the wife and the cars and this, I'm like, uh-oh, we have a Buster Douglas on our hands, or do we have a guy who's going to get better with the belt? Turns out we have a Buster Douglas on our hands who might be on his way out the door.
Absolutely, man. The heavyweight division doesn't stop. It moves forward. We watched it. We've seen it, GZ, with Deontay Wilder. The division moves forward. When Andy Ruiz knocked out Anthony Joshua, the division moves forward. It's not one of these divisions where it's not like we're saying, like, man, I would still love to see Bud and Boots. It's not like that in the heavyweight division. There's no one right now who you just got to see Andy Ruiz in there with. I would like to see him and Jared Anderson, now that we're discussing it. But is anyone clamoring for that fight? No, I just think it's a good fight. Both guys coming off a loss on the same card. Well, you can make that fight. But, yeah, Andy Ruiz have an uphill battle, and I don't know if he's mentally or physically up for the challenge. I really don't. Well, I'm going to win that has to heal for probably 6 to 7 months.
Oh, that was bad. That was really bad. It was moved way back. And he seemed pretty, hey, this is what happened. So, but I did see him throw it. Obviously, it's broken. There's no question that was broken.
Well, so one of the scary things, G, is when you take a guy who we question his dedication and all that. Now a doctor tells him you can't hit the mitts, you can't hit the bag for 6-7 months. Does that guy do other things, or does he get lazier? I think we some kind of know the answer for Andy Ruiz. I hope I'm wrong, but usually you're not.
Yeah, I've seen video clips of him every time I say in the gym, sweating, putting work in. It just never translates to his body. I don't know if it's just his shape, or it just doesn't seem like he doesn't seem like an athletic guy or an athlete who really treats his body the way it should be, like a temple. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think those clips you see, because I've seen them too, where he looks amazing and he's firing off his fast hand combinations. I think if he's called to do that by his trainer 5 days a week, he's probably showing up 3.
Yeah, and who have you seen in the heavyweight division that has that kind of hand speed, that kind of power? Nobody. He's got that kind of movement. Nobody in the heavyweight division. He could have been dominant. He reminded me like a David Tua type who had the punching power. And I'll tell you what, he got rocked by Jared Anderson one time at Gerald Miller at the end of the 3rd round, I believe, or 4th round. I think he got rocked a little bit, and that was a hard punch. But that was it. That's the only time I ever seen him really rocked, except when Joshua knocked him down. That was a flash knockdown. But he has all the tools. It's very disappointing his career the way it went.
Yeah, you talk about fast hands, you talk about a little bit of laziness, and you think heavyweight James Toney. When James Toney was at heavyweight, had middleweight speed at hands, amazing defense, great chin, even can crack a little bit. I mean, he stopped Holyfield, just would not go over that hump, man, of dedication in terms of conditioning. So yeah, Andy Ruiz is in a bad spot, and having a broken hand doesn't help.
And then over the past weekend, we had Virgil Ortiz against Israel Bahacek and Angelo Leo with probably the KO. So you had the fight of the year, probably and the KO of the year back to back. Let's go with Angelo Leo first. Wins a world title, his first world title. He was an underdog going into the fight against Lopez, but he looked phenomenal. And I don't know if that's just his hunger that he's pushed for, because I've seen video of him training. I know a guy from a BT from a True School Sports is very close to him. He tells me that this guy's going to be world champion. He told me that months ago, and hey, it came true. What do you think? What do you think of Angelo Leo?
Angelo Leo landed the perfect shot. Ain't no doubt about it. I just flipped it over from the Ortiz fight just in time to catch it. I think I caught 2 rounds, and then the last round I saw was the knockout. But perfectly placed hook. It was lights out. I was actually scared for a minute, because those are the bad knockouts, man. I think he's going to be good. I want to say I was at his fight with Stephen Fulton, if I'm not mistaken. So I saw him somewhat early in his career. But Leo looks to have the dedication. He can crack. And he showed me some underrated defense. I thought he was doing some good defensive things in there from the rounds I saw. So he's going to be somebody to look out for, man. Like you say, knockout of the year. We still got some months left. And fight of the year in the same night. I'm just happy the UFC was a dud, because I probably would have got caught in the middle and would have missed.
UFC was definitely a dud over the weekend. I'll agree with you there on that one. That was not the best show there. Not the best. But go to the main event there with Virgil Ortiz. Now here's a guy who was hyped up to much like Jared Anderson, but in a different way. He had the pedigree of the amateur skills. 21-0, 21 knockouts. The Golden Boy has the machine behind him. They are pushing him. They were charging him right for Terrence Crawford before this fight was even over. They had everything there, and this looked a little different. This was a little different for Virgil Ortiz. I think when he hit Israel and he didn't go down, I think he got a little shook there. Ortiz gets knocked down twice in the fight, ekes out a decision. I don't know if that was more of a gift decision there, because it was close. It was really close. Ortiz, I think, is the more marketable guy, obviously, here in the States. So I think he got a little bit of a gift there, but I think he realizes that not everybody's going to fall when you hit them.
Well, we covered it earlier. If you want to talk about how Terrence Crawford looked at 154, I don't know about Virgil Ortiz at 154. And I understand he's had all the weight cutting issues and pullouts and things, because he gets, very sick when he was cutting the 147. So I understand the move up, but I'm not sure I'm sold on him, man. He throws everything fast and hard. But when you fight a guy like Barichek, who can handle things like that, and is a natural 54-pounder, and is a proven guy at 154, things can be different. And I think he saw that. And I'm not one of the guys like, oh, you better stay clear away from Bud Crawford. No, we need to see those fights, because, we need to see what Virgil Ortiz is about. We need to see what Terrence Bud Crawford is about. But I tell you what, he didn't make me go run the sports book in his favor if Bud is indeed next. Way too many wrinkles in the game. I think it's like you said, once he realized he couldn't hurt Barichek, and once he realized he could be hurt, it changed his strategy a little bit. And he almost fought desperate at times. You can hear, his corner. You can hear Robert trying to calm him down. Like, man, settle down. And he never came out of that. He wanted to get his lick right back. And Barichek was countering him well at times with a nice uppercut, some good body work. I thought Virgil did good body work as well. I don't know if he's going to be that eraser at 54 that he was at 47.
And I think it goes to tend to show his resume was a little bit flawed. Getting all those knockouts, a little bit flawed. They built him up pretty good. But let's look at this now. Terrence Crawford, Virgil Ortiz fight two guys from Eastern Europe, a big amateur background. Is the tide turning a little bit where everyone says we got to go to the States to fight the real fighters? It seems like it's turning back to where it was back in like the 70s, where the Europeans were dominant and the Cubans were dominant. Now that this style in the United States are we seeing a turn here? Because there's a lot more Eastern European fighters coming in here fighting, and only had 9-10 fights. You look at the Lomos, Madrimov. You look at Bahacek. This is a different turn here with the Olympics coming out now. It looks like the Olympics are done for the United States. This tends to scratch your head a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, you stole my point from me because I was gonna say, as you see the decline in U.S. Olympics, you see the the uptick in the European Olympics, and I think those guys have so many fights. I've always heard they pay those guys over there in the amateur, so obviously they're staying amateur longer. You seeing 300, 350 fight amateur guys fighting pro, so they're pro ready 8 to 10 fights in, as opposed to we'll have a guy, he falls out of the Olympic trials, he turns pro, and you got to get him to 20 fights before you even think he's ready to contend. So that's what I think it is. I think the experience from the Olympics and from the amateurs is carrying over for the European guys, where our guys almost have to turn pro to chase the money. And we're seeing that. We're seeing guys that need a little bit more development as opposed to the European guys who they get a few fights in and they're ready to go. So yeah, it's kind of like what you're seeing in the NBA, to be honest with you, where European fundamental basketball is kind of taking over. So the glitz and glamour, the shock jock stuff is nice for highlights, but the technical stuff, because Belichick was very technical. Virgil was a little sloppy, a little, like I say, desperate, looping, and he fought a very sound technical guy who could take a good shot. And we're seeing that more and more. Madrimov took some hell of a shots from Bud Crawford. So I just think we're seeing guys come over from an amateur program that has them more pro ready, as opposed to guys coming to chase the money who need a little more development.
Now, to that point, you were talking about the Olympics. There is a debate going on right now with the Olympic team, USA against the Dream Team, the USA team that won the gold this year, as opposed to the Dream Team back in '92. Give me, because your channel tends to go to all different genres. You know, you have different genres, and I want to get your opinion on this because I know this is a little off topic right now, but we're going to get into the Canelo thing in a minute. '92 Dream Team versus a team that we see on the court this past Olympics. Who wins? And because when you were seeing the Dream Team, and I know there was a guy saying a point that they beat them by 50, whatever. They're not the Europeans that are playing now. Like Puerto Rico wouldn't even be close to the playoffs in a medal round. But they're not bad. They're not a bad team. So the difference is almost like the Olympics we're seeing now. '92 Dream Team against the Olympic team you see now. Who wins and why?
Man, God, I'm so old school. It's hard for me to say. The greatest team I've ever seen assembled is the Dream Team.
Yeah, all right.
That said, and I hate repeating things on the internet because I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm going to repeat it anyway. I saw someone say the Dream Team played against, I think it was 9 NBA players from other countries. This Olympic team played against like 68. So it just shows you, like we're talking about, the European takeover, not just the European the international takeover. You know, you got Wemby playing for France. That was the first pick in the draft in the NBA. So with the exception, I think, Tony Kukoc in Croatia, you really didn't have that guy for those other teams when the Dream Team was playing. That being said, I cannot forget their impact. I can't forget the ease in which they won. You could say the intensity was different. I think Steph Curry's shooting ability keeps this team in any game. I think the way KD and LeBron can take over a game keeps this team in any game. I just don't know if they can overcome the firepower of when Jordan wants to take over, when Magic wants to take over, when Barkley, and even the underrated Clyde Drexler, when them guys wanted to take over, it ain't much you can do to stop it. Now, I probably would swap out Christian Laettner with Shaq, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, you know what's funny you said? Clyde Drexler was very, very underrated. Probably one of the best players never to win, other than Barkley, win the NBA championship. Came close a few times, but he was underrated and was like, I think he started, but he was like off the bench sometimes there on the Dream Team. Think about that.
Clyde Drexler and Dominique Wilkins got to go down.
Dominique Wilkins,
underrated in the NBA. And Clyde Drexler was so smooth with his game, man. And that's another thing I look at. Like, if I'm looking at the bench of this team and I'm looking at some of the guys coming, Isaiah Thomas didn't even make the Dream Team. Like, it's hard to compare, man. And maybe that's just my age speaking or whatever, but I'm picking '92 Dream Team over anyone.
No, I know, because my kid's like, oh my God, this team now would kill him, but because he's a Steph Curry fan. I mean, obviously, Steph Curry, the best shooter you've ever seen?
Yes.
I think so too.
Absolutely. Look, Reggie Miller was a lights out shooter. Hell, I can even say guys like Dana Barros and Ray Allen and even Dale Curry, his dad. in terms of lights out, big moment shots, Steph Curry is as insane as it gets because, for one, I think he has more depth. And when he heats up, you literally have to cover him when he cross half court. Those guys are running around screens and doing a lot of other things. Steph can knock it down from anywhere. So yeah, hands down.
And I know we're going off a little bit, guys. So we'll get right back off in a little bit. But I gotta bring this point up to you, Purse. The WNBA, I think, is blowing it, and I'll tell you why. Because we're old school here. Magic versus Bird was a phenomenal rivalry. Okay, they made video games after these people. Lakers, Celtics. It was Magic versus Bird was on the computer that you had to put a floppy disk in. That the graphics were terrible. Okay. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, they're blowing it. They're just blowing it. They could make that into a rivalry similar to that. Pull the two girls aside and say, hey, guys, let's be this like WWE wrestling. Don't like each other outside, but like each other behind the scenes. They can make this similar to that and boost the WNBA. So the NBA don't have to funnel all that money into it because I know in Vegas, WNBA is sold out. It's sold out. All the time. They have a chance. They have a chance to turn us around. What do you think? What do you think about that situation? Because it's such a hot topic and a lightning rod. And I'm just saying you should market that.
Yeah, look, I'm starting to view sports as entertainment, anyways. So at the end of the day, I want to be entertained. I understand what you're saying because I just think the WNBA is so much on a women's empowerment thing that they don't want to show flaws, and they think like that kind of heated rivalry would be a flaw. But at some point, it's gonna happen. Why not take the two biggest names in the sport?
Yeah.
I don't even think you have to pull them to the side. I think if you just let their natural aggression and their natural competitiveness take over, these girls have been battling it out since college. So there is a little bit of disdain there. When your girl knocked Caitlin Clark down, there's video of Angel Reese standing up on the bench clapping and celebrating it. Not that she hates Caitlin Clark, it's competition. And I think the WNBA wants to push away from competition for whatever reason. I mean, the girl that shoved Caitlin Clark down, that they talked about that on ESPN for like a week. I'm like, dude, she got pushed down. She was talking, trash, and it got a little heated. So I don't know why they're fighting against that. I do think it's more. I think right now where they're at in terms of how popular they are, they feel like we can accomplish more together than apart. So I understand both sides of it. But this is entertainment and this is competition. And you got to give it to us full-fledged. That's what separates the NBA from the WNBA right now.
Listen, if I was the marketing director at the WNBA, I would get with EA Sports, Sony, PlayStation, Xbox, and say, we're going to make the cover of the NCAA or WNBA video game Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. Yeah. I guarantee they would pump that. So my kid likes to watch that now. And even with me with golf, if before Tiger Woods got in, I'd flick right by. Tiger Woods came, I stopped.
Exactly.
Right? Why not market it?
Yeah.
It's stupid. It's dumb. They just not marketing it. But maybe they hit the jackpot like I did in Vegas. But speaking of jackpots, well, Berlanga gets the Canelo jackpot. Edgar Berlanga wins the jackpot against Canelo Alvarez here. Deserved or not, he's got it. September 14th, same night as UFC in Noche. Why? I have no idea, but they're going against him. Canelo says he is a different animal. He'll outdraw the UFC. I can't believe that's going to happen on the same night. The traffic's going to be terrible in Vegas, so I'm staying away. What's your opinion on Edgar Berlanga? Now, I predicted this was going to happen. I predicted he would fight Munguia and fight Berlanga and then come back and fight Benavidez in the Sphere next year on Cinco de Mayo. So I'm two out of two, right? 2 for 3. All I need is that last one, although Benavidez said he's moving up. I don't buy it. I think it's more of a marketing ploy. So let's give me your opinion on, number one, how Berlanga you think got the fight, if he deserved it, or two, is Canelo maneuvering around this way so he can finish off his career without looking bad? But I think it's backfiring a little bit because I think people are starting to turn on Canelo.
Yeah. In terms of Berlanga earning it, he's undefeated. I guess you can go with that because I don't even know if you can say Jaime Munguia earned it. But
Mhm.
Canelo's in a position, much like Floyd late in his career, where he can do what he want to do. It's one of those, if you want to watch, watch. If you don't. And that's the attitude and the temperament Canelo's kind of going with right now.
Let me ask you this. Let me jump in on that real quick because you said Floyd did that. Okay, but Floyd fought the people that they wanted to see him fight, number one, and was Floyd just that much better on a different level than them? So when he picked these guys out, he made them look really bad, or is Canelo cherry picking who he wants? Because there's no way you could tell me an Edgar Berlanga is on a level of people that were later in Floyd's career, whether it be a Cotto, because he fought Cotto later in his career. I mean, weight depleted, but Manny Pacquiao, Andre Berto was good. Andre Berto was a good fighter. We knew he wasn't going to win, but this is a different animal. Berlanga has done zero. So go back to that point there. We were saying how Floyd, and I apologize for interrupting.
No problem. So I think when I say the way Floyd went out, so if you look at Andre Berto, I think Berto was 4 or 5 losses in, but Floyd was like, "This is my retirement fight. This is how I'm gonna go out. I fought Pacquiao. Y'all asked me to do that. I did that. Now I'm gonna go out the way I want to go out." So I view, and I guess the reason I say he went out on his terms, because you got to remember when Floyd fought Berto, people were saying, "Well, there's Keith Thurman out there, and there's Errol Spence," and at one point, people were saying there's Amir Khan, and Sean Porter, and all these guys. And Floyd was like, no, we're not doing any of that. I'm ending with Berto. Well, then you come back and you fight 0-0 Conor McGregor, and people are like, well, hold up, dude. There's Keith Thurman out there. So they went back down the list of welterweights who are quality. So we're going to say earned it. Floyd fought a guy that had 0 professional fights. Berlanga is 21-0 or whatever he is. He's an undefeated kid. They're going with the Mexico versus Puerto Rico theme.
Mm-hmm.
I just think Canelo wants to do it his way. And I think part of that is why he's shutting down the Sheik. He's basically saying, look, I've been with an egomaniac. I've been with Oscar all those years. I don't want to deal with a guy like that again. And I think that's why you see him and Turkey kind of, nip and tuck and pushing and pulling against each other, because Canelo wants to show I don't need that. Canelo's made more money than he'll ever spend. And if you look at the two guys that kind of somewhat shun Turkey, Canelo Alvarez, Gervonta Davis, the two biggest draws in boxing. And I think they're trying to prove a point. They've both dealt with egomaniacs, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, and I just don't think they want to go down that road again. So I think that's kind of where Canelo is. It's like, I'm going to do it my way. He even said, like, he's not going to text me when I got a fight lined up. He's going to do it on my terms. That's more of a pissing competition than anything.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and it's funny you brought up Turkey. I don't want to say nothing on here to get me banned because everybody likes that Saudi money anyway. So hopefully he still would like us. Did you see he got inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I did.
I mean, this is why. Okay, so look at the promoters; they were all over him. This is why boxing gets his bad name. Like, he does not belong in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Okay. He put on a few fights. He made a couple fights that people wanted to see. Okay. That's it. I mean, look, 20 years from now, he may be in because he puts together the fights you want to see. And I agree that he does want that. He ain't doing it for nothing. He likes to be, like Canelo said, the guy's got a big ego. Everybody wants that pat on the back because he's got all the money he needs. Right. So he wants people to go. Now he's got a ring that says he's in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Okay. I was at Canastota this year. Turki Al-Sheikh doesn't belong on that list right now. He just doesn't. There's way too many people on that list and people that aren't in right now that deserve to be on the list before him. What did you think of that? And did it not feel dirty to you? Just for me.
I think the whole thing, man, I think
it's weird.
Try to kiss ass, I always feel dirty to me. I'm just not a guy that's driven solely by money. Someone's money doesn't impress me enough to like bow down. Like even the other night for the Virgil fight, when he came out and he says, I want to do Virgil and Bud on the same card as Shakur and Zapata. And Oscar was like, on the same night? It's like, come on, Oscar, dude. Like, you've been around this forever. You're acting like that because this guy has money. I'll give you one even better, GZ. The narrative is that Turkey's making fights that we all want to see. He made Usyk Fury. I don't want to say it's an easy fight to make, but it's a unification, kind of each other mandatory. If Bob Arum, Al Heyman, Oscar De La Hoya puts on Crawford Madrimov, who's going berserk over that fight? Not many people. Turkey does it, and it's like, oh my God, do you see the fight? I think he's getting a lot of credit for something that promoters have done for years. Now, what he's saying he wants to do definitely trumps what he's done up to this point, which leads to your point. He's not a boxing Hall of Famer. Because if he can pull off half the things he's saying he want to do, like you said, 10, 15 years from now, kudos to him. You can insert him into the Hall of Fame. You can do whatever you want to do with him. But based on the fact, to me, that we got 2 or 3 pretty good heavyweight cards and a on paper great Bud Madrimov card, come on, man. Like, I just think if any promoter put Ngannou and Joshua with you know, I don't know. I just think the narrative is anything Turkey's doing right now is greater than anything any other promoter in boxing has done, and that's just not true.
Listen, if any promoter thought of putting Eminem on in the middle of a boxing show, they would get murdered. They would destroy it. It'd be a horrible show.
Gee, it happened. You remember when Rock Nation came in and they had
Fabulous?
Oh my
God, yes.
Performing?
Yes.
It didn't last very long. It didn't last. Do you imagine if in the middle of a PBC show they give away a car? That event, and look, I love boxing, so I'm in the minority. I can watch it all day. But 7.5 hours is a lot.
Listen, it's too long the attention spans are short here.
Yeah.
And then I heard that the one that went long, the first one I think he did was in the middle of a soccer game that he had to watch, so he just dragged it on. I mean, there's just so many things. To me, it seems like a late night TV like infomercial. It just is weird. The whole thing's weird, and it's the way
they sleep in the zone and you wake up and the same infomercials on. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's weird. It's just really weird, and they're just talking about. There's so many people giving the same opinions over and over again, and they're calling what do they call them? Your Highness or Excellency.
Yeah, Excellency.
I mean, I'm like, guys, it's like them when they praise Al Heyman all over again. It's like, guys, calm down. Boxing always shakes itself out. As dirty as it is, it always shakes itself out. Nobody does this for nothing. There's got to be a reason in here is doing it. I'm guessing it's power. I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about him personally, that he does treat people very well. But still, Hall of Fame coming in like this, I don't think he's done enough.
No, look, Turkey can be a great guy, and I'm sure he is a great guy. And I think he has amazing plans for boxing. The problem is, I think he's a super fan that has a ton of money. And as a super fan that has a ton of money, I think it can hurt as much as it helps, because you think about it. And this is a problem with a guy with this much power and money who changes his mind like that. First, he said, I want Bud and Boots. That's the fight I'm making. Now, forget that fight. I want to make Bud Canelo. Nah, I ain't dealing with Canelo. I want to make Bud Virgil Ortiz. How is that helping anything? You went through 3 opponents for Bud in a matter of 3 months, maybe. And I get it, it's all talk, but it still turned fans off. It's like, okay, who's Bud going to fight next? Because I was more interested in fighting this. I just think when you have that kind of money and power, you can change your mind at the drop of a dime. That doesn't spell success in boxing.
Right. In boxing, you're trying to just throw money at a problem. It's like the U.S. government. You try to throw money at it just to let it go away, and it gets worse and worse and worse until you're at the point of no return, and then you're just, I got to scrap the whole thing. And then it just goes. It was like the COVID thing when they threw money, or I can't say that on YouTube, but that whole throwing money, and now they're trying to collect on these loans, and there's tons of people that can't pay it back. So that I just scrap the whole thing and forgive it.
There's no easy solution to fix boxing. I guess it's subjective to say if he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame or not. I personally thought, wow, when I saw it happen.
Subjective.
Yeah.
That he'd be the quickest guy in the Hall of Fame since I don't know who. Like that, I don't even. What is it? Not even a year.
Well, I mean, and to think about that, the pugilists that actually fight, what do they got to be retired 4 years before they even up for consideration? I mean, it's getting crazy, man. It truly is getting crazy.
And the thing that really just bugged me a little bit is how the promoters were all in there, like, yeah, he does, and the Suleiman's giving him a belt, and I'm like, oh Lord, this is just what we need. It just gives you a bad taste in your mouth, and it says, man, these guys are just like pro wrestling. They're bad guys and good guys in the front and the back. They're all making the deals and they're friends. It's
I
the same
treat it as
thing.
entertainment, brother. I treat it as entertainment now.
Unbelievable. Speaking of entertainment, Percy, you got the VIP crew on your YouTube channel. You've had some great guests. Sammy the Bull interview, fantastic. Honestly, how was that in general? How was that going into that?
It was cool, man. It was I did like I don't want to say a pre-interview with him, but I talked to him the day before, and he just said, hey, what do you have in mind? I told him. He said, I'm good with it. Set it up with my girl. We set it up, and we knocked it out, man. He's I know people frown on this sometimes when you say he's a cool guy because of his past, but he's a cool guy, man. He's almost 80 years old. We all have a past. I don't hold it against him. He was a gangster. And when you're a gangster, you have to do gangster things to survive. How many of them guys can say they're 79 years old right now? So he obviously, he's persevered through a lot. He came home from 22 plus years in prison with nothing. Sammy does pretty well for himself right now. So I have nothing bad to say against Sammy. Good guy. He was very open about the questions I asked him, and I asked him about everything from the movie he has coming up to his relationship with John Gotti, and him expressing the fact that he can never hate the guy. He just felt betrayed by him, and we all felt that way. So, good guy. Not a bad word to say about him, and he was very open and a very super cool guy.
Let me tell you what my favorite one was. I think Danny Boy, because you don't see much of him, and I've followed him for years. And quick question: if you talked to him outside of that, and I don't know if you did prior to that, did he have any opinion on the stuff that's going on with Diddy now, or he said the industry is totally like that?
Yeah, I didn't talk to him. I've seen him say, and I think that's why I stayed away from it. But I've seen
Okay.
him say, I mean, what's happening to Diddy is happening right now as we're doing this podcast, G. Like it's a revolving door, man. I think one of the most interesting things he said to me was, we all think of Tupac. So I said, what's it like being back on death row with no Tupac? Is it bittersweet? And he was like, dude, it's not just Tupac. It's the girl Storm. It's Nate Dogg. They've lost a lot of pieces to the puzzle. Suge Knight's in prison, so being back on death row is a great thing because it's where his career got started, but it is bittersweet because a lot of those pieces to the puzzle are either no longer here, which Storm, Tupac, and Death Row Nate Dogg has passed away, and the guy who was the head honcho was locked in prison for a long time. So, very interesting interview with Danny Boy. I've interviewed him a few times. Danny Boy is another very cool guy, and I wish him the best, man. I hope Snoop Dogg really take this Death Row thing to the next level.
Yeah, he was one of the guys that I always said, you know what, he didn't have any big hits. I don't think he even put one out, but he was always in the background, did a lot of the beats for Death Row, and he just didn't get enough credit. I thought he's extremely talented. I saw a bunch of documentaries on him, very talented guy, and he just didn't get the break that he needed, and then that whole thing blew up. I think if he was in there more.
Never released music. He was on, obviously, he sung the hook for Tupac's
Yeah.
I'm Not Mad at You and a few of Tupac songs. But he literally, they say timing is everything. His first step with Death Row, his timing was just horrible. Like he literally came in right damn near on the Vegas thing with Tupac getting shot and killed. So it was imploding quickly.
Yeah, I thought he was very talented. But anyway, you got a lot going on, Percy. Real quickly, if you get out your social media and your YouTube channel there, that we can see it with Vivek Wallace.
The VIP Crew is the YouTube channel, man. I just put up an interview with this producer called Sleep D's out of LA. And he produced a song for a K-pop group, the biggest K-pop group called BTS. Man, if you're not familiar with BTS or K-pop, dude, I think within 2 hours it had like 1,000 something views on Twitter. Like they are super fans. So check out the Sleep D's interview. All of my, well, with the exception of Facebook, I'm just Percy Crawford at Mr. Louisiana with the second I being a 1 on Instagram and Twitter.
Well, as always, Percy Crawford, it was good to get you back on here. August 13th today is the anniversary of the Zapata brand. 1 year today we started the show. How about
Congratulations.
that?
Awesome to be on for the anniversary, brother.
This is good. And it was funny because our first guest we had on was Greg Valentino in there. And my brother literally said, because we'd watched you for years when we would bake at night and we would see the clips on. And again, it was the YouTube dial up, or the internet we had was not the greatest out here. We're in the middle of nowhere. So it always would spin, but we'd always wait and watch it because at night we'd get it better. The stream was better. But you were always one of those ones that we always wanted on. Didn't know if we can get you. My brother reached out, and it's been a great friendship ever since. And I really appreciate you coming on, giving us your advice and your talented stuff right here on our channel. We really appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Shout out to Dennis, man, and happy anniversary, GC. That's a big deal, man. 1 year in the books, brother.
1 year down. Hopefully more to go.
Many more to come, man. I appreciate you, bro.
Percy, anytime. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks for watching the Zapata Brand Podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast and listen where all podcasts are available.